Another feature of the Star Trek Museum is its extensive collection of props, models, and costumes, of which I'll show you a brief tour of. This, for example, is the costume worn by actor James Cromwell in his role of Zephyr Cochrane from the movie Star Trek First Contact. By the way, for those of you wondering what that copper coil is, that's a warp plasma conduit for the Starship Phoenix. Moving on, we have some props from Star Trek Enterprise. We have a typical screen monitor for Enterprise on the left. You can see a Starfleet plasma rifle, which is odd because I didn't think they existed until Next Generation era. Here's an early pistol phaser and PAD personal access display device for Star Trek Enterprise. And this gives you a closer look of the typical LCD display monitor of Enterprise. Now here we have Captain Archer's standard duty uniform. Next to Captain Archer's uniform is Captain Kirk's wraparound tunic that's seen in Star Trek the original series. A tribble. Here we have an original series tricorder. Phaser Type 2, the so-called pistol phaser. And standard Starfleet issue communicator. Next to Captain Kirk's uniform is a standard female Starfleet issue uniform, along with more tribbles. Moving on, we have a replica of the Nomad probe from the original series episode, The Changeling. And then to its left is the Tri-D chess set that was often seen in use by Kirk and Spock in the original series. Now here we have a replica of the phaser rifle that was only ever seen in one episode of Star Trek the original series, the second pilot episode entitled Where No Man Has Gone Before. And this is a Vulcan ceremonial robe that was seen in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And then we have the robe worn by Mr. Spock in the events of the film Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Oh yeah, for you home computer enthusiasts, you ought to get a kick out of this. This is a Mac computer circa 1986. Boy, is that primitive or what, even by today's standards, 2008. And this is the uniform worn by DeForest Kelley in the film Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. This is a command uniform circa 2293, one of the most popular uniforms for Starfleet. This rather large oversized bottle is the christening bottle that was used to christen the Starship Enterprise B. In this case, it's a bottle of Dom Perignon, vintage 2265, which by the way is when Captain Kirk ostensibly assumed command of the Starship Enterprise. And another bit of Trek lore is that this bottle was brewed in the wineries, the Picard wineries of France. And by the way, the christening of the Enterprise B occurred in 2293. One of my favorite exhibits is a couple of pages on display from the Picard Family History album. This shows Jean-Luc winning the Starfleet Academy Marathon, the only underclassman, as I recall, that did so. And here's another page of the Picard Family album. By the late 2300s, the Starfleet uniform, or rather Starfleet Command uniform, had altered to look like this, which you're seeing here. A standard one-piece affair, which many of the cast refer to as the spacesuit. Here we have an assortment of medical devices from the 24th century. For you Dr. Crusher fans, this is her standard duty uniform. And then over to its left, rather her right, our left, is one of Guinan's many costumes for you Whoopi Goldberg fans. Here we have a series of comm badges in use in the 24th century. We have the original comm badge, followed by various replicas, or not replicas, just variations in the arrowhead design. This is Odo's changeling bucket, where every 18 hours he had to revert back to his gelatinous state, sort of a like goo. Free goo. And from Deep Space Nine, excuse me, from Deep Space Nine is the standard uniform that Constable Odo would quote-unquote wear. Captain Janeway's command uniform. Note on the far upper left is a tricorder circa 2371. And then to its lower, in the lower left, is a personal access display device circa 2366. This is the Borg skin graft that the Borg attempted to attach to Data from the events of the film Star Trek First Contact. A close-up view of the interior of Data's arm. This is a model of the USS Rio Grande, which is a Danube-class runabout vessel, circa 2369. This is a model of the USS Horizon, Starfleet Registry NCC 178, I think. It's kind of hard to see. This is a model that was on display in Captain Sisko's ready room, I think. For you weapons enthusiasts, we now come across the extensive collection of phaser weapons used in the Star Trek universe. There's too many of them for me to stop and videotape every one of them, but we'll just do a slow pan and you can see what we got. We got variations from the rifles to pistols. Actually, this particular one, folks, I couldn't let go on videotape. I believe it was sort of a joke amongst the cast and production crew of the early seasons of Star Trek Next Generation that this particular hand phaser type was known as the Dustbuster phaser because of its uncanny resemblance to a dustbuster. And here we have a more generous display of phaser weapons, phaser rifles, whatever you need for your weapons needs. This is your standard Mark IV photon torpedo casing. It also served as Captain Spock's coffin after the events of Star Trek II Wrath of Khan.